all of the research, and this research has been around for several years now, shows that share of search shows itself to be a really good proxy for your share of market.
Liam Maroney is the CEO of Storybook Marketing and is LinkedIn famous for his takes on B2B marketing, his support of brand marketing to build recall with prospects, and for his backyard videos where he discusses all of that and more, even in winter. He's also a MarTech contributor. Liam, welcome to Conversations with MarTech.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm LinkedIn famous. I did it. Look at me.
There you go. We'll ask later about what you wanted to be when you were 10, and maybe LinkedIn famous will be today's conversation, we're going to talk about share of search, which you think is sort of an under-the-radar marketing metric. So let's start at the very beginning, as they say, by explaining what exactly is share of search.
Yes, and I really do believe this. So at its core level, share of search is actually not that complicated an idea. It's why it's a valuable idea and what it correlates to, I think, is what's really important. Basically, what it is it's of all the branded searches that are happening between you and your competitors, how much of it do you have? And how is that represented as part of the total? Which sounds relatively simple, and it's quite easy to get, which is why it's a really nice metric. But the reason that it's really valuable is that all of the research, and this research has been around for several years now, shows that share of search shows itself to be a really good proxy for your share of market. So if you're wondering how much of the overall category am I owning as a brand, share of search is showing itself to be a really good proxy for that. And it's also a really good output for brand efforts. So if you're doing brand, if you're trying to show up more, if you're trying to take more market share, it's one of the more tangible metrics that can show that you're actually growing over time, especially stealing share from competitors.
All right. So you mentioned it's relatively easy to get. It's got like a low barrier to entry. How exactly does a marketer go about measuring their share of search? What tools are they going to use to figure this out?
So there's a few different ways you can get it, starting from free to relatively inexpensive. Like you can do a version of this with Google Trends, Google Data, where you just look in your brand. It's going to be less accurate, but it's directionally valuable. So you can just say, what do you look like over time? Then do the same search for your competitors, and then just export it all and put it into a spreadsheet. And that'll give you a picture. Now, the good news about share of search is it doesn't change that quickly, so you don't need super granular day-by-day data. So general trends is usually quite easy to get. There are specialist tools, My Telescope being one of the bigger ones that kind of came out when Les Binet started to evangelize this a few years ago. That starts like $20 a month. Like it's not an expensive tool. And if you already have SEO tools, which a lot of companies do, SEMrush, Ahrefs, it's part of those tools as well. So a lot of the existing stack that you have, there's a good chance you can pull it without actually doing much more or using one of your SEO agencies to pull the data for you.
All right. So does share of search work like across categories? Is it more useful in some areas than in others? Or is this something that any marketer that's listening to this conversation can go walk away and go, I'm going to go and do this like right now?
There are some nuances that make it challenging. So it actually is potentially more useful in B2B than it is in B2C, because what it can often show is you get a bit of a lagging view. So your share might go up now and that might not hit your pipeline for several months or quarters. So it's almost like a predictor of where things are going. Where it can get hard is if you're in categories where your brand has a very generic name or competitors have a very generic name, where you've got Qualified or Notion or brands where, you know, the word can get searched a lot. That can make it very difficult. So there is a little bit of that. There's ways of getting around that, and you kind of may have to build a smaller picture. So instead of it being Notion, it might be Notion software, Notion app, things like that. The thing to remember about it is that it's a directional picture. So even if you're not capturing 100% of all the searches that you're getting, even if you're getting 50% of that picture, you can still see if that goes up or down. So it's still useful, even if it's a smaller picture. The other place it can be tricky is if you're trying to capture search from a company that might do one of the things that you sell, but also does 50 other things. So you might be competing with a large enterprise brand. They're going to get 100 times more search than you will. So it's not, a point solution versus like a platform. It's not going to be a very useful picture. So there is nuance to that as well.
Does it help? Does it help that you and the company you're comparing are sort of on a level playing field? Maybe like your customer base, the how long you've been around. You mentioned like if you're going up against an enterprise, their share of search, I think naturally it sounds like is going to be dominant, right? So
100%. And I've seen this with clients. So I think there's a few ways of interpreting it. There's actually, I would say there's 3 different views that you should be thinking through. One is your competitive set. And yeah, if you're a brand new market entrant, you've been out for a year, you have 0.2% of the search. That may not feel like a very useful picture and can often be a bit depressing. No one wants to see that you're 0.3 by next year. So yeah, that's one view. The other view is just looking at you as a brand itself. Are you going up and to the right? And that standalone is useful. And the other is, how's the category doing? So it's just good to know, are we in a category that's growing? Are we stagnant? Are we in decline? Because that can tell you a lot about what you need to know. And it's also just helpful to know, are there other competitors that might be coming in that maybe they're growing faster than we're giving them credit for? Maybe some of the competitors are dropping the ball and there's an opportunity.
All right, so there is often, as they say, a devil in the details, or maybe in this case, the devil is in the data. Is it possible that you could misinterpret, or the data could be a little bit misleading when it comes to share of search?
Absolutely. And I think the important thing about share search is it is a trending metric. You will always have these spikes that happen. You could release a PR report now, you could be in the news, you could have an event, and you'll see spikes. The question is, do those spikes last or do they go down? And very often an immediate spike might last for a week and then suddenly it goes back down. So what you're looking for is material changes over months and quarters, because it shouldn't change that quickly. And the more mature your category, the slower that number is going to differ. So a lot of it comes down to just don't react and go, look, our share of search is up 20%, and then it falls flat and nothing happens of it. What matters is there a meaningful change that lasts over time?
Right. And do you ever take a share of search, website traffic, revenue? I feel like you could kind of put those on top of each other and say, okay, here's a big picture idea of what has happened, and at the end of the day, everybody's looking at revenue. So like, where does the revenue come if your share of search is going up?
Ideally, yes. And actually, the most ideal picture is if you can show that there's a relationship between share of search and either pipeline or revenue. The best case scenario, and I have seen this, is you might find, hey, when we go up in share of search, we see that hit the pipeline 6 months from now. If that turns out to be true, now you've got yourself a globe that you can see into the future. Like, you've got a crystal ball. That's an amazing thing to have. That's ideal. Doesn't always work that clean of a picture, but yeah, it's good to know, like, maybe our traffic to the website's going way up, but our branded search is going way down. Then you might be starting to go like, okay, something's not connecting in there. So a lot of the time, no relationship might be equally as valuable as some relationship.
Right. So it sounds like it could work as a diagnostic tool, because if you're getting the share of search and you're getting the traffic to the website, you're not getting the conversions, it's not a problem of people looking for you and finding you. It's a problem of actually closing the deal on the website.
That's a perfect way of putting it. Exactly that.
Yeah. So check those landing pages. Check those value props. Make sure you get a pricing page, all that good stuff that we talk about converting that last mile of the buyer's journey.
Yeah. Never underestimate the last mile.
All right, there's a question we're asking everybody on season 1 of Conversations with Martech, and that is, what did you want to be when you were 10 years old? I'm guessing it wasn't LinkedIn famous.
It wasn't LinkedIn. When I was 10 years old, I wanted to be a Ghostbuster. That was vehemently what I wanted to be. There's a chance I may have just wanted to be Bill Murray. Because I think I probably wanted to be a weatherman at one stage, and I probably wanted to be a whole bunch of other things. But that was it. Ghostbusters was it for me when I was a kid.
Liam, thanks for joining us for Conversations with Martech.
Thank you for having me.
If you like Conversations with Martech, you're going to love what the Martech Conference is planning in March. The Spring Martech Conference takes place March 25th and 26th, 2025. It's online, it's free, and it'll be more interactive than ever before. Get your free pass today and join the MarTech conversation.